Ready to rock and roll? Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for August 15, 2016. We'll begin with a special order calendar decision items. Item number 1, 18909BZ, 3067 Richmond Terrace, Staten Island.
They wanted a 1-month adjournment.
Okay. Item number 2, 16-12BZ, 184 Nostrand Avenue, Brooklyn.
We need to defer decision. We're still waiting on air quality information.
Okay. Continued hearing items. Item number 3, 32788BZ, 13628 39th Avenue, Queens.
Okay. They submitted photos of the restaurant and the mezzanine. We haven't. I noted myself that it didn't make it into the statement of facts that they received on August 2nd a permit from DOB to obtain the C of O and to install a second means of egress from the mezzanine. And we do have an affidavit from the owner stating that the mezzanine won't be used until DOB approves. I think the statement of facts needs to be updated to reflect this new developments. They're requesting a 3-year extension of time to complete due to delays in processing at DOB. But still, I see nearly $20,000 in fines due on BIS, in 16,000 of which was just issued in April for an ECB violation. And they also have a July 26th violation for failure to certify where they did pay the $1,500 fine. But I think we need to have all of these fines paid before we can actually vote. And I just want to make sure that the plans that were approved by BSA actually reflect the current conditions, because they showed us photographs that I can't really tell where they are on the plans. So just to make sure that there weren't any changes to the approved drawings. Anybody else? No? Okay.
Item number 4, 20197BZ, 11102 Rockaway Boulevard, Queens.
They requested an adjournment.
Item number 5, 4-98BZ, 12704 Guy Brewer Boulevard.
Also an adjournment.
Yowza. New cases. Item number 6, 112964BZ, 14736 Brookvale Boulevard, Queens.
Okay. Just sort of free association, the materials showing the approval of the project, plus the C of O and the building's website, shows that this variance was for lot 33, but the tax map shows the parking lot is on lot 30. That needs to be explained, corrected. I did go into Acris and I see that these two lots have been exchanging hands back and forth between obviously related parties, the Rosedale Auto Parts and a private individual, kind of back and forth. So they need to clarify that. There's an April 21st ECB violation that shows a compliance certificate was not accepted for work without permits. Excuse me. I'd like to know what the proposed use group 6 uses are for the rear portion of the building. These would need to be limited to a parking category that does not require more parking spaces than are available on the lot. And while I appreciate the request to eliminate the term of years for the variance, and that these particular owners have complied with the terms of the variance and renewed regularly, a new owner or operator might not be so conscientious. And it is a use that is not really ordinarily compatible. It's a use that's not usually compatible with a residential district. So I'm not sure how we could even tie an unlimited term to the owner-operator. There wouldn't be any way for us to keep up with this. With respect to compliance, over the years, and the photos show a lot of signs and banners, which I doubt comply with the C1 regulations. The sign calculations on the drawings show they comply with the C1 regulations, but those drawings don't show nearly as many signs as as the photos do. The BSA sign calculation sheet shows a non-compliance with the sign regulations, and unless those are pre-61 signs, they need to comply. There's also this wood staircase and railings on the side of the building that, unless that's just temporary pending some additional work, that's not a legal stair. Also, if this is use group 6 retail, you need a handicap entrance. The little ramp at the back is not a handicap access, that's probably just for the deliveries. The perimeter shrubs are sparse and not dense as described in the statement of facts. Their purpose is to conceal the use from the adjoining residential properties and from the street. These should be filled in and the dead ones replaced. The rear perimeter appears to be holding debris. That should be cleared and fencing installed, and they can't rely on the neighbor's fence for fencing, even if the fencing of the neighbor is high. The fencing also needs to be upright and replaced where decayed. There's a broken curb cut that needs to be replaced, and there needs to be, there were drawings, BSA drawings showed curb cuts all the way around on the planting beds, and those don't exist. So those have to be installed. The parking spaces have to be striped. And it looks like there's a building setback at the rear that looks like it needs repair and painting. It looks very shabby. So that's one reason alone not to eliminate a term. It's an opportunity to clean up a site every 10 years. Anybody else?
Yeah, the prior resolution said that, kind of implied that they were allowed to do repairs in the parking lot. And it's something the community board had an issue with, and I really don't think repairs in the parking lot are appropriate. Concerning the change from one use to 2 uses on the site, I was concerned about exactly what the proposed additional use is and whether they had adequate parking for that use. They stated that they were going to add a handicap ramp to the entrance to the rear, but it's not shown on the plans. We shouldn't be legalizing construction that has already been performed. And they show their signage based on 3 frontages, but they really only have 2 frontages, and there's a sign on the side of the building which should be removed. Regarding the fencing, there's this short chain link fencing around the frontages of the site, but adjacent to the residential, there's 3 different kinds of fencing. The best looking fencing is PVC fencing, but I have a feeling that the residents install this, not the owner of the site, and it doesn't look good. They were supposed to have bumpers in their parking lanes. The bumpers are not installed. The spaces should be striped. Landscaping definitely needs improvement. And I guess that's about it. And also, they have a number of garbage cans all around the site, which I don't understand. Like, every 10 feet, there's another garbage can.
Okay.
Following up on the fencing, I understand the 4-foot-high fence that's there along the property. I'm okay with it being along the Brookville frontage and the other street, I'm forgetting, I don't have the map in front of me. But along the residential side, I think the height should be much higher. It should be at least 6 foot high. And maybe that should be not a chain link fence, that should be a much more opaque fence, and the rest can be that. And there's one space behind the building which is not used for parking, but it's there, and I would like to know what is the purpose of that space and what will it be used for, especially with the new use that is being proposed. Will that space be utilized as part of the use group 6? Will that become a place for mingling or gathering? So we just need to understand how that space is going to be utilized.
Anybody else?
I had questions about limiting the use group 6 use to the parking category that permitted. I guess they're using one space per 400 square feet, so that gives them 9.3 spaces, and they're giving us 10, so it seems to be limited to that.
Yeah. Okay.
Item number 7, 10405BC, 255 to 75 Park Avenue, Brooklyn.
Okay, the plan notes should have indicated that the approved fire alarm and sprinkler systems have been installed, but other than that, they provided printouts of sign-offs for sprinklers and alarm systems and photos of all of that installed, and I think the fire department will hear whether they're okay tomorrow, but they're expressing okay. Anybody else?
I think there's a change in their hours. The operations from 6 a.m. to midnight, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. On their compliance sheet, I think they say that they're in compliance, but they have different hours. So
Okay.
they need to deal with that.
They also say, though, that they have events that go to midnight.
Yeah.
Right, but in
They
their
wanted to
compliance
cover it.
sheet, they say that they don't do that. So they just need to jive.
Right. The community board said that they weren't complying with the permitted hours, and that community board wants them limited to 9 p.m. Sunday to Thursday and 10 p.m. Friday, Saturday.
And they should put their signage analysis on the drawings.
Okay.
But they are in compliance if they go till midnight, because
Yeah.
the previous grant says
Yeah,
they're allowed to go to midnight. This
Yeah.
is just the community board who doesn't
No, no,
want
they're
No, no,
charged to.
community
Their
board was
papers.
saying they weren't complying with the permitted hours.
Yeah.
I don't know what the situation was. That's not explained in the community board resolution.
But their compliance chart, I think, is incorrect as well. It shows
Okay.
different hours than actually what their narrative says. So they have
Right.
like a little chart.
Right,
we just need
right, no,
them to
I know, I'm
clarify.
just saying that it seems to me that even the hours that they're using are less than the maximum amount of hours that they're allowed based on the previous grant, is what I'm saying. Because the previous grant is basically allowing them to operate all day long, from 6
Yeah.
a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week.
Right.
So anything that they're doing now is less than the maximum hours.
And the community board may have misunderstood what was
Right.
allowed, so the applicant should clarify
That's what I was
that.
saying.
Okay.
I just wanted to know if they were adjacent to any residential uses, because they have that private party area in the mezzanine, and just wanted to make sure there were no complaints about noise.
Okay.
Item number 8, 4-11BC, 1747, 1751 East 2nd Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, this was just an extension of time to complete construction. I actually had no issues. Anybody
Just a
else?
question if they have their funding in place at this point?
They said so.
They
They
Oh,
have
okay.
sent an email in.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's an email.
Okay.
Okay, appeals calendar, continued hearing items, item number 9, 10815A through 11015A, Glebe Avenue, Bronx.
Okay. They provided images from September 2007 showing facades under construction and establishing that the work continued from the date of the statutory vesting until prior to 2008, when the statutes requires that Cs of O have to be obtained. And then, I mean, the only, let's see, the other issue before that. Then there was this very confusing submission talking about, asking if we would help them legalize somehow the Parker Building. And it asked for guidance from the board on how to obtain a C of O. I'm not sure, I don't think that the hearing process is the proper venue to rectify something that's completely outside of the application request which was for a common law vesting. Besides all of that, it's the Department of Buildings that decides whether a C of O can be issued and whether a proposed zoning lot subdivision creates a new non-compliance. And I think actually probably what happened is there was a zoning lot merger and then an attempt to subdivide it, and the subdivision creates a new non-compliance. So it'll work out with DOB and so on. Plus, I think we do need, because it is one zoning lot that has all those 4 tax lots. I don't think the submission ever showed us zoning lot calculations with the 4.
No.
So we need to have that to make sure that we've got a compliant application. It had to have complied with the 2007, or sorry,
Prior to 2006.
2006 zoning, right. Anybody else?
I thought they better illustrated the serious loss portion of the property. They fleshed that out with greater detail, showing that basically they would be reduced down to 1 2-family home.
Okay. Just 1 second. Okay.
Item number 10, 260 15A, 122 Bard Avenue, Staten Island.
Okay, they provided a September 2015 DOB objection sheet that includes many of the concerns that we expressed at the last hearing. They are the standard minimum distance between buildings, wall to window. The sheet shows that the objection was corrected. It states show required side and rear yards. I'm not sure how this was resolved because it actually doesn't say it was corrected. Provide 30-foot minimum open area adjacent to rear wall of each building, no driveways or parking. Also, the objection sheet doesn't actually say it was resolved. And comply with the use of the open area for parking under ZR 2564. Also not clear it was resolved, but when I look at the plans, they now include much clearer zoning requirement references and calculations that appear to show compliance and address those issues. So I'm not sure that we still have open issues. We had asked them to go get a ZRD1 about these open issues, not realizing that DOB had already picked this up in objections. So I don't know if anybody else thinks that we need further clarification on this.
Yeah, I still think that according to 23891, the 2 garages they have at the rear are not permitted to be in the open area, and they do by 3 feet or whatever, encourage, it's an incursion into the open area at the rear of the building, and I don't believe that's permitted.
Okay, so it needs to be clarified. Okay. And just as a reminder, we still need a restrictive declaration drafted and submitted to council for, to allow the fire department the right to enter and enforce the no parking areas, and to require that the property owners maintain the drives free of snow and debris, and to install no parking signs. Okay.
New case is item number 11, 264 15A through 268 15A, Herbert Street, Holton Avenue. He's asking for a request for postponement
Right.
again.
Fire department issues, it said?
Yeah, fire department and MTA.
Okay.
Item number 12, 272 15A, 35 Derrick Court, Staten Island.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that the plans submitted to BSA match the DEC approved plans. So I'd like a letter from the architect signed and sealed that says that they are the same. One of the reasons I'm so concerned is this is built right on the edge of a wetland. So I want to make sure that we're not inadvertently permitting something that DEC didn't permit. Fire department signed off, but does require that all the Siamese connections be within 100 feet of a hydrant, and that parking is prohibited along the on-site fire apparatus access road with signage. I believe that's all said on the drawings. Anybody else?
Yes, the DEC plans were illegible in my copy, and I didn't understand how they're going to maintain the DEC required structures in the rear of the building when the building is built lot line to lot line, and it didn't appear to me that there were any rear entries to the rear of the property to maintain those structures.
Okay.
Actually, it wasn't very clear what access onto the site really was. We had loading berths, but how does that?
Yes, that's true.
It was not clear.
Right.
You couldn't see the really what was paved surfaces.
Yeah.
And then also, there's apparently a pump station on the property, and I was just wondering if this is a private facility and if they are going to maintain that. It's in the middle of their, like, cul-de-sac, or hammerhead, whatever. And from the photos they gave us, there's already parking along Derrick Court. And a part of the fire department's request is no parking, and how are they going to enforce this? Because it's not all their property.
They mentioned that they had an easement that's been extinguished, but it wasn't clear to me where that easement was and what it meant. So I don't know whether that was about Derrick Court and parking, whatever.
Right.
Anybody else? No? Okay.
Item number, you ready? Okay. Item number 13, 2016-4174A, 711 Secret Avenue, Bronx, Queens, sorry.
I just wanted to clarify that what this is. So when the fire department is applying to modify a C of O, the sort of more seasoned commissioners know this because they've worked on a few of these. It's that on the C of O, there's notations on the back that indicate different kinds of fire safety measures, and they would want to add to the back the fire safety measures that require the fire separation. So that's the modification to the C of O. I note, though, that as of August 9th, the owners engaged counsel, which they haven't been involved really in the fire department's outreach until August 9th when they engaged counsel, and a fire code consultant who says they're going to be in touch with the fire department to try to talk about an alternate approach. Maybe they'll come tomorrow and talk about the alternate approach. That would be useful. So let's just see what happens. Otherwise, they need to move this. We can't delay it long while they don't end up meeting with the fire department, right? So, anybody else? Other issues? And it seems to me that the fire department's proposal for the 51 fire doors is extremely simple and easily accomplished.
Well, I had some questions about that.
Okay.
Because if these were going to be activated in a fire, because there's no hardwired smoke detectors in the building.
They don't need to be activated. They can just be doors.
Right. When I visited the building, and
Did you go inside?
I went inside,
Oh, you
yeah.
got inside.
And I guess the assistant super took me on a tour, and he said their main concern is there's a lot of elderly people,
Yeah.
a lot of people in wheelchairs. How are they going to get through the doors,
That little assists.
if that works?
Those work.
There's a question of, what exactly the fire department is looking for.
So is it going to be like one of those doors that you press, or it's one
Paddles.
on the side?
Yeah, I could just have a little thing with an assist on the side, like we have right here. That's the way.
Typically are what's installed.
Okay. Because the only other one is, like you said, something where there's a fusible link, and then you have to have a fire detection system throughout the
Right.
whole building. So, okay.
Zoning calendar, decision items, item number 14, 15615BZ, 18-20 East 50th Street, Manhattan.
Okay, we do have DOI sign-off. We asked at the prior hearing that they clean up the statement of facts to reflect the actual location and conditions, because it's sort of like a boilerplate where they didn't read it. And I think, let's see, and we have a June 24th letter from the fire department, which requested, let's see, that documentation be submitted showing the sprinklers have been recently tested and the alarm system installed and operational. I'm just asking fire department whether the February 9th submission, which was a 2015 fire department fire alarm and sprinkler inspection report, whether that is satisfactory. And maybe the fire department didn't see that. And then I think Commissioner Shanda had specific comments about the statement of facts?
Yeah, I think I'd raised those and I forwarded that to project manager, so
Yeah, so they were
hoping that
just
would get resolved.
To make the statement of facts actually have to do with this project. Anybody else on this? Okay.
Item number 15, 22515BZ, 126-134 East 78th Street, Manhattan.
They submitted plans showing that the shading devices at the greenhouses, skylights, and gym, that there will be those, and that they will serve also to reduce the glare from the interior illumination for the neighbors. A letter from the architect describes how the shading can be controlled. I think that what we should do is make a condition of approval that they maintain those shades to prevent the interior illumination from becoming a nuisance to neighbors, and that we have some sort of an hours where the shading must be down. So for example, I'm just proposing within 2 hours after nightfall, say, or and lifted not earlier than 7 a.m. Just as an idea. Anybody else?
Item number 16, 25615BZ, 5602 Roosevelt Ave in Queens.
They submitted a set of plans, but I don't know actually what was changed on the plans. The zoning sheet was corrected where there was a really bad math error. But I actually don't know what was changed because the statement of facts directs us to something that they say is new, but in fact that was on the old set. So I don't know what the new set was. What we did ask, they checked the zoning analysis. We have DOI and fire department. I don't know. Anybody else? Okay.
Continued hearing items, item number 17, 24014BZ, 1620 Shore Boulevard, Brooklyn.
Okay, this is sort of this ongoing saga here. The revised drawings continue to show an encroachment in the side yard at the first floor, and it's not really the first floor. If it were really at the first floor at grade, this wouldn't be an issue because there's already an encroachment at grade. But this first floor is located 8 foot 6 inches above grade for a toilet room and stair, which does not currently exist at that elevation. So the language in the easement is for light and air within that area, and the easement doesn't begin in a particular horizontal plane. It doesn't say that light and air starts at the second floor or anything like that. So as far as, I don't know, one reading is that it starts at grade. What it does do is it creates exceptions for encroachments that existed as of the date of the 1946 survey, which we don't have a copy of, but the photos of the existing house show that the incursion was at grade. So I'm not trying to interpret for a court or anything what that easement really means, but if the neighbor who has expressed opposition to that encroachment, if the neighbor doesn't agree that the modification that's proposed is consistent with the terms of their light and air easement, then this applicant has to either make a deal with that neighbor, or they have to go to court to resolve it. We have said this over and over again in the hearings, and the applicant complained that our hearings are dragging on. They're dragging on because the applicant isn't understanding that the BSA is not a real property court. We just need to know that it's allowed to be done, and then we can review it. But at this point, we don't know it's allowed to be done. The neighbor apparently doesn't agree. So whether either we get an agreement for the neighbor or go work it out. Anybody else? Okay.
Item number 18, 9215 BZ, 170 Buffalo Avenue, Brooklyn.
Okay. They provided a site plan that shows that at-grade parking in the easement area, with at-grade parking in the easement area and triple stackers in the other areas, the 220 spaces required for an as-of-right outpatient care facility could be met. It's not correct that a 220 space lot is not permitted by the zoning resolution. When there is required parking, the lot can contain the required number of spaces. The limitation that they're referring to is permitted accessory parking. I found a much more persuasive argument against the outpatient facility to be the materials submitted by the consultant, which is that these must be located near a hospital to facilitate effective and efficient use of staff and facilities. I actually have worked on a lot of outpatient facilities, and it's true, all of them are across the street from the hospital. So I do think the applicant was responsive to all of the concerns that I am able to review as opposed to the financials. The plans were cleaned up, open space calculations were clarified, a refrigerator trash storage room was included, wrought iron fencing and landscaping surround the site. They elaborated on the history of the site and the obsolescence of the building for a conforming or purpose-built use. I only don't see on the drawings that the second floor roof is to be usable by patients. They actually say it is in the statement of facts. But it doesn't show doors, it doesn't show, you can't get there, right? It doesn't show plantings, furnishings, anything. And with respect to the landscaping plans, we talked about this the last time, I don't understand why the plantings aren't shown going around all the perimeters on all of the adjoining properties. It's kind of odd how they just sort of stop. It seems arbitrarily unless there's an explanation. In addition, they provided some details about the planting, but we don't know where they are, so they're super vague. They just, it's a detail, but then you don't know where to go from there on the drawings. Okay, so I just want to hear from others and see how we could resolve this, so.
You've picked up on the issues that I had concerns about. I think just to be specific about the landscaping, there are these three properties, lots 28, 29, 30, which really don't have that consistent landscaping buffering. It's just the fence in the rear yard, and it's only shrubs. So it would be nice if the height of the shrubs are high enough to block the beams from the cars, and so we just want to make sure that they do raise to the height to allow that.
I reviewed the financials, and for the most part, they've been responsive to my questions. As regards to the land values, they went through their adjustments and they made corrections to one composite factor that was left off in the previous report. The only thing they didn't do with the land values comment on the passage of time and what it might have done to the land values, because all of the comparable sales are old ones. I'll assume, just for the purpose of this exercise, that land values have risen since 2014 in this area, and so therefore I feel that the land value is fairly conservative if it stays the same. The depreciation of the existing building, I had questioned the condition and the actual building age, and why they chose a 35-year warp schedule, and they explained that, you know, Marshall and Swift and the American Hospital Association stated that the service life for hospitals is short, between 40 and 50 years, and that there wasn't that many that much flexibility in the types of charts that you could use to gauge depreciation, and so they chose the ORPS commercial building 50-year service life chart, and that was acceptable to me. They clarified and corrected all of their figures that were varying from one statement to the next and one line to the next. And basically, the loss in revenue between the proposed and the as-of-right seems like it's relatively small. It's $43,000, but the difference in the scenarios is really not just the difference in income, but also the difference in the construction costs due to having to cut out the part that protrudes in the sky exposure plane, and that actually creates a bigger disparity in value to about $500,000 roughly. So I think that they've proven their case.
Okay, great, thank you. Anybody else?
In addition to the specialist in terms of the infeasibility of the outpatient facility, I thought in terms of the C finding, that it was definitive that this would be a much better use for the community.
And the community thinks so too.
Right.
Right, okay. Okay, great, thanks.
Move on. Item number 19, 115 BZ, 24 East 39th Street, Manhattan.
Okay, I think the submission was much clearer this time. They submitted demo plans for the improved extended stay hotel, which improved as in enlarging the size of the rooms. I just want to clarify, the statement of facts is a little bit loose in its language, just to clarify that the scope of work for the larger extended stay rooms is there isn't demo on the second floor. It's removal of one partition. So, just to not exaggerate what's actually going on, but the upper floors require removal of more walls that include bathrooms, and that's a much more costly type of removal. The written scope of work, as repeated in the statement of facts from the drawings, makes it sound like a total gut renovation, but that range of work is only in the areas to be demolished. That's not in other areas. For example, removal of 4 of 9 bathrooms on the 3rd floor. But the cost of the scope for this work went down from $3.68 million to 3.68 million from 4.3 million. So they did sharpen their pencils when they were looking, and I think having the demo drawings made it easier for the cost estimator to really understand what was going on. The as-of-right residential version was revised as requested to provide living spaces wherever practicable. So it's actually a much more plausible as-of-right solution. Before they had amenity spaces and all kinds of places where you would have an apartment. The unit layouts are also more spacious with 2 and 3 bedroom units on the upper floors. So I thought that was at least a more plausible as-of-right project. Those were my comments.
Oh, I want to address the financials. I had several comments in the previous hearing, and they were addressed to varying degrees of satisfaction. The site value, they actually took 3 extended stay hotels that sold in residential districts that were actually larger, adjusted them down for their larger size, but basically showed that the site value that they had before was actually a little low compared to what it would sell for today. And they provided the appropriate backup, so I was fine with that. Their restaurant income, they clarified that the restaurant will exist in all scenarios, and they recalculated the square footage in the basement and the first floor that actually be attributed to restaurant space, and then they assessed appropriate income per square foot for each one at $100 a square foot for all space on the first floor and $50 a square foot for the space in the basement, and that's fine. The hotel food and beverage income and expense was removed like we requested because there isn't going to be any room service. All food is going to be through the third-party independent operator who operates the restaurant, and that's already accounted for. the residential rents were actually revised, and the cover letter says it was revised to note the size, features, and locations within the building with $60 a square foot as the target. And I think the point that they were trying to make that is, even though you're renting 1,000 square feet more in the second scenario than the first, it still isn't enough money to compensate for the construction costs. And so the residential scenarios are not viable. However, when you actually look at the charts, to me, there's a lot of confusion. I think it would be better if the narrative actually articulated the exact standards that they were applying to the apartment pricing, and then follow through explaining line for line. For instance, the chart doesn't drill down to a price per square foot for each apartment, so even though they're saying their target is $60 a square foot, the only way to know whether or not they're somewhere in the neighborhood of the target is to sit there and do the math line by line, which I did.
Yes, of course.
And when you do the math for each line by line to get to this price per square foot, you see a whole bunch of inconsistencies. And so then that raises a lot more questions. And this is the same problem that we had in the first report. I'm just going to state a few quickly. Some of it is a problem of the plans, like you have large studios that probably should be one-bedroom apartments, but they aren't. Some of it is in not developing a pricing plan for each size apartment first, and then vary it based on location by floor, and then location within the floor. And in any case, when you see a two-bedroom apartment on the 6th floor renting for the same price per square foot as a two-bedroom apartment on the 2nd floor, or when you see a three-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor renting for less money than a three-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor with very little variation in the square footage, it makes you ask so many questions that the main message that they're trying to give is lost. Would a 6th floor two-bedroom really cost the same price as a basement studio on a per square foot basis? I don't think so. So now, for the hotel income and expense, they state that they gave us the actual William Hotel income and expense statement to prove that they're actually making less money today than they estimate in the existing scenario. And when you look at the included income and expense statement, it actually shows that there's a loss of $518,000 annually. But when you look closely at the income and expense statement, you see that that's really because they have an expense line for depreciation at $580,000. And so I don't even understand why you would include that in this income and expense statement. And kind of the message, once again, is lost about them taking in less income, because it raises a whole host of other questions. For the construction costs, soft costs, I don't understand why the existing scenario and the proposed scenario have title insurance fees and loan fees when there isn't any construction loan for those two scenarios. So if they can clarify that, or if it's an error, they need to take it out. Let's see. Oh, okay, now for the extended stay and the hotel, the proposed hotel rates, income and expense statements, they actually have a 2015 page that is for extended stay, 33 rooms. They have a 2017 page for an extended stay, 22 rooms, a 2018 page for a transient stay, and I think the point they're trying to make is that the extended stay 33 rooms makes more than the extended stay larger room scenario, even though the rent is lower because there are more rooms to rent.
Yes.
And that, of course, the transient stay makes the most because it's more competitive in the industry, which is in the industry of short-term hotels, and has a higher occupancy rate. But I'm not understanding why you have different years for the statement. If that's, why do you have a 2015 year projected, a 2017 year, and a 2018 year projection for each different scenario? Was that an error, or is there some other point that they're trying to make? So they just need to address that. And the extended stay hotel rates per room, we had asked for information about the whole pricing structure in the first hearing as to why certain rooms were priced at a certain price per night and others weren't, and they didn't address that at all.
Okay. So please bring the financial expert to the hearing to discuss these. Okay.
Item number 20, 12615BZ, 1782 East 27th Street, Brooklyn.
They request an adjournment.
New cases on the zoning calendar. Item number 1, 5414BZ, 1506 Decatur Street, Queens.
Okay, and just noting that this, and this was pointed out by some submissions, the site is in the Ridgewood Industrial Business Zone, which was created in December of 2013. So I believe we must be especially careful about considering a change of use to residential. I also note the objections of City Council Member Reynoso, Community Board 5, and the Ridgewood Local Development Corporation. However, I also note that the site falls just on the extreme edge of the IBZ, which included all of the vacant sites shown on the land use map and excluded all residential sites on that map. And that the vacant sites on the subject block are surrounded by residential uses. The site is also on the edge of the M14, so kind of in the realm of what this would do to the IBZ, I think either nothing or it's extremely limited. The uniqueness study shows that the subject is one of 2 vacant standalone sites of similar dimensions, so I do think that establishes uniqueness. I'm wondering though why the as-of-right is only 3,010 zoning square feet at 1.33 FAR when the maximum allowable is 2 FAR, allowing 4,500 square feet. I think that the financials are therefore not looking at an optimum 2-story build-out. And also I ask, why is the assumption that 2.2 FAR, which should be the allowable FAR under this application, the M14 is a 2 FAR zone? Especially, this kind of some often massing just tells you the whole story, especially since the proposal is taller than the typical houses adjacent, all of which are 2 stories, not 3 stories plus penthouse. And so I'm not sure that the R6 is the correct equivalent. There's also a 3-story plus there is a 3-story building plus cornice across Decatur Street, but that is oriented towards the avenue, so it's not really the same building typology as what's being proposed here. I'm also not getting why a new multifamily building isn't designed to be accessible, or at least the ground floor units that duplex to the cellar be accessible. So it's actually, there's sort of no fully accessible unit here. This has to comply with not only ADA and what we fondly call Local Law 58, even though it hasn't been Local Law 58 in about 30 years, and the Fair Housing Act. You know, architect beware, the Fair Housing Act applies, right? We do have a fire department letter from August 5th. They say that they request that the applicant be required to revise the drawings to include all information necessary to show that the proposed building complies with DOB section 1021.2.4, something to do with single means of egress. With respect to the financials, which I'll just refer to a little bit, the site value adjusted price seems to be correct at $70 a square foot, even though the math is wrong. But it seems like the highest value is the oldest, so maybe it could have been dropped out. With respect to $20 a square foot commercial rentals, I'm just observing some of the things we've seen in other places. This is Bushwick, or nearly Bushwick, where in another application we saw this huge market for artist studio space at much higher rents. But on the other hand, if you're just looking for commercial space, when I did that on like Zillow, I was finding $20 was the range for standard commercial space. And those were my comments. Anybody else?
Well, I actually agree with you that, you know, that this building might be a little too large for its area, and I also question why they went to an R6 for the max FAR instead of just using the M1-4 max FAR. And I also agree with you that the warehouse as of right scenario should have gone to a full 2.0. They say that it's not marketable space, but they put an elevator in there. So if you're gonna put in the cost of an elevator getting to the second floor, you may as well build out the entire second floor and, maybe you can rent it to some sort of commercial / storage office kind of combo use. So I agree with you that definitely needs to be redone in a 2.0 scenario. First off, they need to reconcile the financials with the statement in terms of the cost and value information as well as the cap rate, because both documents have totally different information. Then when you get to the financials, I had questions about the site value. The site value is based on comps that are vacant industrial sites that are either M1-1 or M1-4. And what they do is they drill down to the available building area per square foot price for each zoning to take care of the fact that you have different zonings. But still in all, they have a zoning line, and there's a plus 20% adjustment for zoning for the M1-1 to the M1-4, which is raising the site value. And they need to articulate a reason why just drilling down to the price per square foot isn't taking care of the difference in the zoning, because that's a major thing that's raising the site value up, and then it raises the development costs up, which makes it seem like you may need more space. So that's one major issue. The other one is they have, when you look at their residential comparables, they have 2-bedroom comparables and 3-bedroom comparables to the different types of apartments. And they're adjusting the comparables down to size, and they say that that's because the subject apartments are so much smaller. However, they're not giving any square footage information for any of the comparables, so there's no way to know whether or not those comparables are equally as small. They show photos, but you don't get a photo of the entire apartment. You're just getting like the living room, kitchen. So you really can't tell. There is also a simple error in one of their adjustment tables where they're putting in adjustments for amenities and not for condition, but in the narrative, they're saying that there are adjustments for condition, but not for amenities. So they need to look at that and just make that correction. And then if you look at the plans, it seems to have a roof deck, but there doesn't seem to be any internal access from those 3-bedroom apartments, but there seems to be a staircase from the general staircase that has a landing there, which leads me to believe that everybody might have access to the roof deck. If so, they should just discuss that in the financials and show whether or not that adds value to the property. And then finally, you have construction costs for a warehouse at $221 a square foot and construction for a residential building at $216 a square foot. And I don't understand why it would cost more to construct a warehouse, which is a very easy to construct, relatively simple building without any finishes.
Regarding the neighborhood character, I agree that a 2-story building seems to be more in character. I thought they could do an area study of FAR and number of dwelling units in the buildings in the area. Also, we had a nearby variance, which we just voted on recently, 29713 BZ, which had rentable area in the cellar, which was included in the floor area. And why shouldn't we do that in this scenario?
Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay.
Item number 2, 2815 BZ, 88 Fulton Street, Manhattan. It's PCE.
Okay, this is a PC, is a legalization. We do need the DOI. I understand this is a grandfathered facility, but I'd like to know what accommodations are made for disabled users. Fire department had several issues, some of which seem to require some work. They said the exit from the restaurant through the kitchen is contrary to code. There's a screen door attached to an exit which opens against egress flow. The fire alarm is not installed, therefore we need to see it installed and be tested and approved before we can vote. And the applicant has to provide the status of the sprinkler system to show that it was tested and approved. And then I just wanted to point out, if the fire department didn't see this, that there was a condition of approval in 1988 that said that a monthly log must be instituted and maintained for the monthly inspections of the standpipe system, and that the person responsible for the system shall have a certificate of fitness. So I'm not really sure what that's referring to, but, heads up. Anybody else?
I wanted a clarification. Prior BSA approvals made reference to roof. That was also part of the PCE, which is not stated in this current application, so I would just like a clarification as to if that is part of the PCE and if not, just... And there's a little bit of inconsistency in the statement with regards to the building, existing building, number of stories.
Okay.
That just needs to be consistent.
I think the statement says the roof isn't used any longer.
Right,
Oh,
that's
it's
what I
stated,
thought.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I missed that then.
I didn't
Also,
see
if
that
they
either.
could clarify, they're on the cellar mezzanine, I believe, not on the ground floor
Yes,
mezzanine.
yeah.
Because the ground floor mezzanine actually has residential, and I don't think that's permitted.
Yeah, it was not clear
Yeah.
what they were actually,
Which mezzanine?
which mezzanine.
This is one of those buildings which...
Right. Anyone else?
Item number 3, 13115 BC, 650 Broadway, Manhattan. It's also PCE.
Right, and the legalization also opened in March of 2012. This is it's a martial arts studio. So we need a community board recommendation and DOI. We do have fire department sign off, except that now we need, because it's a legalization, proof of the installation and inspection of the sprinklers and fire alarms. I'd like to know whether the fire department is okay with what was submitted, which was a 12/11/14 sprinkler test and a August 18th, 15 report. So if they could just look at that and let us know whether that's sufficient. Okay.
As of April, the 5th floor, they said was vacant.
Yeah.
Is that still the case?
For some reason, I wrote down, do they have LPC approval? I seem to think that this was...
Because it is in a historic district,
Yes.
but it's an interior, so they
But
just need
some
a
of the
certificate
CNE,
of
right,
minor
okay.
work.
Yeah, and then they have a fire escape at the rear, which extends beyond their property line. I just want to make sure that they have egress out of Shinbone Alley. And then they have a number of violations, and what's their schedule to cure those violations?
Aren't the violations like elevator and things like that?
Right, but facade, elevator,
Those are the
boiler.
things that, this is the problem always when our applicant doesn't own the building, right? So,
Right, but they've been there for 4 years.
yeah, but they
Right.
don't own the building. That's the problem. What do we do with the landlord?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So,
Well, sometimes this is a chance to get the
Yeah.
landlord to do things.
it is. And either we take that position where the
And they do-
business owner operates illegally because the landlord refuses to cure.
But they do use the elevator.
Yes, but they don't have control over repairing the elevator. That's the problem, right? So, yeah, it's a tricky path. Okay.
I just wanted a clarification regarding the LPC. There is a sign outside, and I don't know if that requires an LPC approval or not.
Ah, yeah, okay. It does, definitely does.
Item number 4, 277...
So with signs in the window within 18 inches.
Yes, no, it's extending, protruding from the
Right,
facade.
no, but if they had signs in their own window
Then it's-
within 18 inches, it would
Okay.
also,
I see.
okay, sorry.
Item number 4, 277-15BZ, 2621 and 2623 Avenue R, Brooklyn.
Okay, we need a community board, that's where we are, right, Avenue R, okay. We need community board recommendation. On the first floor plan, they need to clarify for me anyway, that the side yard will remain at the existing width of 5'2", except for that 8-foot long portion that has an existing width of 4'10". It's just the dimensions aren't kind of targeted to specific areas. Since this is a corner lot and the existing building is more or less in compliance with the regulations, the as-of-right horizontal extension into the deep side yard, I think, are acceptable. The increase in lot coverage is only 4% over the allowable, so modest compared to many of the applications we see and consistent with area standards. However, with respect to the requested 1 FAR, there are only 2 houses on the social block that come close to that at .91 and .96 FAR, and only 3 houses within 400 feet of the subject that equal or exceed 1 FAR, and we don't know whether those are legal. By the way, since the streetscape analysis never uses block and lot, but the FAR analysis does, it's really always hard for me to find which buildings are being referred to on the map versus the streetscape analysis, but I think that there's an error in the FAR study, since the streetscape analysis indicates there's 1 BSA approval on 27th Street for a 1 FAR building, and that doesn't show up on the FAR study. But anyway, that's on another block. But since one doesn't necessarily perceive FAR, I always like to look at the bulk of the proposal, and I look at the bulk and I say it is massive, and all of that is caused by this huge open attic with 852 square feet of zoning floor area. The attic needs to be reduced in mass. There appears to be no reason for its enormous height, which is not dimensioned anywhere, but appears to be close to 15 feet. The attic makes the building extremely awkward. It towers over its neighbors, and it's completely out of character with the neighborhood. So I'm not really sure what the story is about that attic, but just squish it down. Anybody else?
Could they just clarify the open application or an application that hadn't been approved, or maybe had been approved, but there was no permit for work that was done at the second floor to legalize a bathroom and an extension?
Huh?
So I just would like to know whether, I'm assuming that the extension was actually built, because that would be that little overhang. But it's not clear that they're legalizing that portion with this application.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree that there was some construction that was not, because I don't believe the outline of the building complies with what was shown on the Sanborns.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't agree that this was like the legal condition for many, many years. When they give an FAR study, could they please give the number of buildings in the FAR study so the numbers have some kind of context? And can they please provide a table of the homes in that study and indicate which ones have a special permit? I agree that this building will be taller than most homes in the area, and also the yards, the side yard and the front yard doesn't comply with the survey. The survey shows 9 foot 6 inches for a front yard. They're saying it's 10 inches. Then the survey says
10 feet.
Oh, 10 feet, yeah. And then they're saying that one of the side yards is, on the survey it says 4 feet 7 inches, and they're saying it's 4 feet 1. So please just check the survey, make sure everything complies with what's on the survey.
Okay. Anybody else?
I also had a question about whether or not the rear was legal, and it seems like there were DOB permits, but there was no sign-off ever.
I'm not sure that there was actually a permit. I think it was left in status right before permit.
Oh, okay. It looked like it
From
said-
1998.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Anybody else?
You've raised all my concerns. I just want to point out that the application does cite that there were 4 BSA cases in the area where FAR was increased. Again, as you said, FAR is a number and what you see is a different thing. And I think all of the other examples that were cited, these were mid-block sites. Not, this is a corner site, so the massing is quite visible as opposed to the other ones. And given that there's a corner lot, that the site frontage, the massing, the attic, I think it's too enormous. And given that it's not a habitable space, it can be reconfigured in a way to bring the massing.
Right.
That is more in keeping with the character of the neighborhood.
Even if it were habitable, it doesn't need a 15-foot ceiling.
Agreed.
Okay. All right, thank you.
What? Item number 5, 2016-1209 BC, 2701 Avenue K, Brooklyn.
Okay, this statement of facts never tells us what the requested FAR, open space ratio, and lot coverage waivers are, and the plans only show the FAR. The BSA calculation sheet doesn't show the proposed lot coverage. So out of all of that, there's questions. I don't actually know what we're being asked to do. So the FAR analysis shows many buildings within the 400-foot radius and social block with FAR 1 or greater, although many of those are in an R4, the district boundary line of which is adjacent to the subject property. With respect to the variance, the uniqueness study shows several 30 by 100 lots with pre-61 houses, all of which have non-complying front yards. The need for the variance seems to me to be relatively clear because it's this corner lot, since there's really no way to extend the house without encroaching on the 27th Street front yard, or alternately having to make a needlessly odd-shaped extension, although you do get a functional, if awkward, floor plan without the front yard waivers. I note that the existing house already has an odd little addition in the side yard that will be removed, and the second floor extension at Avenue K is not making any use at all of the incursion in the 27th Street front yard. I think that's what's shown in the way the plan section was taken. I guess that's the roof pitch that it's taken through. It's not even a closet, it's just a void space. The K Street front yard extension at the second floor will be complying at 15 feet, but I do note that K Street appears to have consistent deep second floor setbacks, which this proposal would reduce. The applicant really needs to demonstrate that this would not disrupt the character of the street. The waivers for the new encroachments on the front and side yards are minimal, however. But I do think that the transitions from addition to existing house are very awkward and should be studied. The existing house is very symmetrical, and the transitions between the main massing and the sort of extensions that are natural to the house, so I think they were all designed at the same time, are really careful and clean. The extensions that are proposed are just sort of attachments. It's a very elegant existing house. You should have elegant attachments. They should also provide an axonometric of the proposal, which will clarify how the roof transitions are working. Anybody else?
Regarding their proposal, they're relying on the uniqueness of the home layout, which I had a little trouble accepting. The dining room is adjacent to a hallway. I didn't see the need for the hallway running from the entrance foyer to the kitchen, because typically homes, you walk through one room to the next, and they could reorient the dining room east-west and just walk through the dining room. The kitchen has its own entry, so I didn't feel that there was really a need for that hallway, and they didn't necessarily have to come into the front yard on Avenue K for the first floor layout. I'd like them to show compliance with the landscaping regulations. And regarding their uniqueness study, it seemed to me that some of the other lots mentioned were actually more hindered than this site, that they were either a narrower width or unbuilt in comparison to the site. And they would also have difficulty in enlarging to an FAR of 1.0, so I just had some trouble with
So you
that.
don't think that uniqueness has been established?
For the variance part, yes.
Anybody else? Okay.
Item number 6, 2016-1216 BZ, 1128 36th Street, Brooklyn.
We have fire department sign-off and DEP sign-off with respect to noise. I thought the submission was very clear and complete, and the EAS is really good in spite of a few open issues to discuss. The Assembly Hall has an occupancy of 290, but that's so confusing because there's only 166 kids in this school, so you add a few teachers, what do we need so many more spaces? So that kind of raises the permit for construction showed this portion of the building as a synagogue. So is this portion of the building going to also function as a synagogue? If yes, we need to know that, in which case there are parking requirements that need to be addressed. The access to the building through the elevator is shared, the access to the building through the elevator for the kids is shared with access for offices, so that's shared with strangers. This is something that we're very concerned about, so we need a protocol for having children accompanied in the elevator, and otherwise, except for those children who need to use the elevator and are accompanied by adults at all times, all the children have to use the main stair on the other side of the building. I want to make sure that the revised floor area numbers for the use group 6B use include 2,000 square feet that were filed as use group 16, but I think we checked that, and I think they do. The DOT letter, I think is going to be revised. It misunderstood the projected use of the building, assuming only 66 kids. I think now they're going to revise that. There were many DEP questions in their July 8th, 16 comment letter, including concern about adjacent auto body shop that includes painting. So that's been a big concern for us in general about air quality. The statement of fact states that 70% of the students will walk and the balance will take the B110 bus, but we need the EAS, I think it's being revised, right, to show that, in fact, the children will not take a private school bus, they're taking this B110 bus. And so the EAS then, and they didn't resubmit yet, right? Oh, they did? They just did, okay, I haven't seen that, but the original EAS recommended a no parking zone in front of the school, which I assume was for that private bus that they didn't know the kids are not going to be taking. I'm not sure what the parking situation is for faculty. There was a parking demand study between the school and office, for the school and office, which shows that there are 18 vehicles that need to park. That exceeds the 13 vehicles that are requested for the parking deduction. I thought, really excellent parking study observed illegal parking in the area and an underutilized pay parking lot, which I assume will stay underutilized because it's probably expensive, and why wouldn't you just illegally park? So the extra car, since the extra cars in this application plus the no parking zone in front of the school would probably exacerbate the illegal parking condition, I think the applicant should increase the parking spaces to the 18 that were shown. There appears to be room for that since 9 stackers are actually shown in the approved DOB set. So just do what you were originally approved to do, which is still less than what's required. And I think those were my comments.
I totally agree that I think they should provide the 18 parking spaces, and I think they do have the room for it. But I just had questions about, they say that no teachers or staff are really expected to drive, but they don't really talk about vendors, and I mean, this is a school, so they're going to get deliveries and that sort of thing. So how does that happen on the street side, or are they expected to drive in and, you know, go down into the cellar, or how does that exactly happen? And also, let's see, what else did I have? Oh, yeah, there's a PAA that looks like it's been approved for 13 spaces.
What?
Yeah, they explained that. Anyway,
Okay.
that was my comment.
Anybody else?
Well, they did the Phase 2, and I guess, well, it's up to DEP, but it looks to me that they could do the indoor air quality samples now to find out if there's any VOC concerns. And I was wondering if their change of use from the DOB approved plans will trigger bicycle parking. It seemed to me that it would.
It would.
And I think they need 10 spaces.
Okay.
Also, the DOB plan indicate a different stair circulation layout than the BSA, so just would like some clarification on that. In terms of the assembly hall and the cafeteria, what I would like to know is how often is it estimated that the assembly hall is going to be used? Is it to its full capacity? And also the drawing had fixed seats. I don't know if those are fixed seats or those are just shown for the plan purposes. I would like some clarity on that. And I guess the question is, can that assembly space function as other spaces, especially, it's, the statement of findings says it meets the New York State educational law requirement, and one of them is physical training. And I'm assuming that means gym, but there isn't any provision that has been made in the building for unless the students are going to be taken outside to some other facility. So I think some clarity would be helpful.
Or if they're going to use the rooftop at all also.
The rooftop or the assembly room.
Right.
So I think that clarity.
Right. Normally, we see those as study halls, right? Not even really as assembly room, they're study halls, right? But it's not labeled that way on the drawing, so that's what makes it a little confused. Anybody else? Okay. Okay.
This concludes the public review session for BSA for August 15, 2016. Ms. Aug?